Commander Elias Dre had seen worlds where the air burned his lungs and seas boiled under alien suns, but nothing in his career had prepared him for Zytheria Prime. The planet's surface shimmered with metallic plains, jagged crystalline towers rising from the ground like the spines of some ancient creature. Even from orbit, the city below looked alive, almost breathing, as if the planet itself were aware of the intruders descending upon it. Elias stepped out of the shuttle with a careful grace, his boots crunching against the polished metallic ground. Around him, the team of human diplomats and scientists followed, faces pale but determined. Their mission was simple in theory: make contact, gather intelligence, and establish peace. In reality, it was a tightrope walk over a canyon full of teeth. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something sweeter, almost intoxicating, that made the hairs on Elias's neck stand up. His mind tried to categorize it: flowers, chemicals, alien pheromones, but it was impossible. Everything about this place screamed of difference, of a civilization utterly alien to human senses. "Commander Dre," said Lieutenant Marasati, her voice steady but quiet. "Sensors are picking up unusual energy readings. It's not like anything in the archives. Could be defensive, could be something else." Elias nodded. "Keep your hand on your weapon. Stay alert, but stay calm." "That's what they'll expect if we panic." The path to the palace was lined with statues that seemed alive. They were tall, elegant figures with limbs that stretched and curved in ways no human anatomy allowed. Their eyes glinted, catching the sunlight, or something more. The team felt their gazes follow each step, even when no eyes could be seen. Mara's hand twitched over her sidearm as she passed. "Do you think these are alive?" she whispered. Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. The question wasn't whether they were alive. It was whether they were watching, judging. When they reached the palace gates, they were met not by soldiers, but by silence. The gates themselves were enormous, crystalline constructs that seemed to hum in the air rather than stand on the ground. The surface rippled with color, reflecting the humans' forms and distorting them, like looking into water. "Beautiful," murmured Dr. Leona Kim, the xenobiologist, her eyes wide.
"I've never seen anything like it." Elias allowed himself a brief glance, but his attention returned to the approach. The human group moved as one, every step calculated.
They knew they were guests, but they also knew they were vulnerable. One misstep could be disastrous. The gates parted before them silently, without a mechanism or sound.
It was as if the palace had anticipated their arrival.
A single figure appeared at the far end of the grand hall, a silhouette framed by light that glowed softly, almost liquid in its intensity. Elias felt his stomach tighten. The figure moved with a grace that was unnatural to human eyes. Each step was measured, deliberate, and yet somehow impossible. The aura around her demanded attention, and even without seeing her face clearly, Elias knew instinctively that she was the ruler. She stopped at the top of a crystalline dais, and the room fell into silence. Every human instinct told Elias to bow, to show respect, but he hesitated. Something in the queen's posture suggested she wasn't here to intimidate. At least, not in the way humans understood intimidation. There was curiosity in her stance, patience, and perhaps something more personal. Then she spoke, and the sound cut through the hall like a blade and a whisper at the same time. "Do you remember me, human?" The words froze every human in the room. Elias's breath caught in his chest. There was no introduction, no explanation, no title. Just that question. Simple and terrifying in its implication. He scanned the room, searching for a hint, an aid, a translator, a clue. None came. The queen's eyes, luminous and impossibly deep, were locked on him. He should have been terrified. He should have felt confusion, disbelief, fear. Instead, a strange, uncanny sense of recognition stirred in him. He opened his mouth. I don't know, Your Majesty." His voice sounded small to his own ears. The queen's gaze didn't falter. Long ago, she said, her tone softer now, almost wistful, you were part of a choice that could have changed the course of my people. Do you remember it? Elias's mind reeled. Long ago? Choice? The words had weight, but no clarity. He remembered nothing of any previous encounter, yet something deep in the shadows of his memory stirred. A feeling, a fragment of a dream, a flash of light in the dark. The hairs on the back of his neck rose. Mara leaned closer, whispering, "Sir, should we respond?" He shook his head, but not without apprehension. There was a sense of history here, of stakes far beyond any human understanding, and yet, even amidst the fear, he felt the familiar human spark, the drive to face the unknown, to act despite the odds. The Queen stepped closer, and the light around her seemed to shift, almost alive. You do not remember, she said softly. But you will, and you will see why your presence matters. Behind her, the hall shimmered, as if the very walls had started to project visions. Holograms or illusions, Elias couldn't tell. They flickered to life, displaying images of planets, stars, and battles. One image made his heart skip. Humans engaged in combat against Cytherian forces, but the humans were not defeated. They were adapting, improvising, surviving against impossible odds. How? Elias began, but the words failed him. The Queen's voice was calm, almost intimate. Your species is resilient, human.
That is what matters.
Even when I do not remember you, I remember the kind of choices you are capable of. A ripple ran through the hall. The Zytherian attendants, tall and elegant, stood unmoving, their eyes glinting. They were observers, judges, guardians of a history humans could barely comprehend. Yet in that moment, Elias realized the truth. The Queen wasn't merely questioning him. She was testing him. Dr. Kim, unable to contain herself, whispered, "Commander, these visions, they're showing possibilities. Alternate outcomes, perhaps, but why him? Why you?" Elias felt a surge of frustration. He was no diplomat in the traditional sense, no historian of alien wars. He was a soldier, trained to survive, to command, to adapt. And yet, here, in this hall of impossible light and history, his skills seemed irrelevant. The Queen stepped closer still, and now he could see her features clearly. They were delicate, regal, almost impossibly symmetrical. Yet there was something that seemed familiar, as if he had seen her before. Not in person, but in memory, dream, or story. Her eyes held intelligence, patience, and an edge that could cut through worlds. "Do you remember?" she asked again, leaning slightly forward. Elias's mind raced. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words failed. All he could do was meet her gaze, and somehow convey the spark of humanity that had always defined his species: persistence, curiosity, courage, and the unrelenting desire to survive. And then, as if sensing his thoughts, she smiled, or the closest approximation of a smile a Zytherian could make. The atmosphere in the hall shifted. It was no longer solely intimidation. There was recognition, a sense of testing, and a spark of something that might, if handled correctly, lead to alliance rather than annihilation. Elias straightened. "I do not remember," he said slowly, carefully. "But I do know one thing. Humans do not give up. We adapt, we survive, and when we are cornered, we fight in ways you might not expect." The Queen's expression remained unreadable, though the corner of her eyes twitched, as if impressed. The room remained silent, yet the tension had shifted slightly. Elias felt it. Something had changed. The visions behind her flickered again, showing other planets, alien fleets, and the remnants of civilizations lost or transformed. The Queen gestured subtly, and the projections paused on a planet that looked startlingly familiar to Elias. Human colonies were under attack, but the humans were holding their ground, improvising weapons, strategies, and defenses with nothing but ingenuity and determination. Elias felt his pulse quicken. Somehow, these images weren't just projections. They were warnings, lessons, or challenges. And he realized, with a jolt, that humanity was not here merely to be observed. Humans were being tested, and he, standing at the center of the Queen's gaze, might already be the key to the outcome. "Your species intrigues me," the Queen said softly. "Perhaps more than I anticipated." Elias held his ground, keeping his voice steady. "And humans will continue to surprise. That is what we do. Always." For the first time, he sensed a small shift in the weight of centuries pressing down on the hall. The Queen studied him for a long moment, and though he could not read her thoughts, he knew one thing clearly: the future of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself, might hinge on what happened in the next few moments, the next few choices, the next few breaths. And with that, the human delegation realized that their mission was no longer diplomacy. It was survival, understanding, and perhaps the first spark of something far greater, an alliance or a confrontation that could redefine everything. Elias swallowed, feeling the full weight of history, expectation, and responsibility pressing on him. He could not fail, not for himself, not for humanity. The Queen's eyes never left his, and the room remained silent. And in that silence, Elias understood one truth: the real challenge had only just begun. The hall remained still, the air thick with tension. Commander Elias Dre felt his pulse hammering in his ears. The Queen's gaze never wavered. It was as if she could see not only him, but every thought, every memory, every instinct he had ever relied on to survive. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, but cutting through the silence like a blade. "Long ago, your people made a choice. One small action, one small decision, and it echoed across the stars. Do you remember the moment?" Elias shook his head slowly. I don't remember anything like that." He swallowed hard. "I've seen wars, disasters, failures, but nothing that would echo across galaxies. Not intentionally, at least." The Queen tilted her head, studying him as if weighing his honesty. "Perhaps you have forgotten. Perhaps you were too young, too insignificant to notice. Or perhaps your mind shields you from knowledge of what you once did." Her words were cryptic, almost teasing, but they carried a weight that made Elias uneasy. He glanced around the hall. The Zytherian attendants, tall and elegant, remained motionless. The projections behind the Queen continued to shimmer, now showing images of humans across distant colonies, their faces grim, their hands busy with weapons, machines, and strange, unfamiliar technology. In one image, humans were cornered on a desert planet, their last outpost surrounded by alien warships. And yet, somehow, they held. Somehow, they survived.
"What are you showing us?" Elias asked cautiously.
The Queen's lips curved into what might have been a smile. Reality. Human. Potential reality. The path your species might take if you are willing to act, if you are willing to see beyond survival and into choice. Elias's stomach tightened. The images were unnerving. The humans depicted were both him and not him. Faces he had never seen, yet somehow familiar. Decisions being made he could not recall making, yet they carried the mark of his instincts: resourcefulness, courage, relentless adaptability. She gestured with a hand, and the images shifted. This time, a single planet dominated the projections, a world he recognized immediately as a human colony on the edge of explored space. It was under siege, attacked not by Zytherians directly, but by a rival alien species that had long coveted human territories. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and yet still fighting. improvising weapons from mining equipment, turning transport ships into makeshift fortresses. It was chaos, but human chaos, unpredictable and relentless. Elias clenched his fists. He had read reports of skirmishes like this, but the visions felt personal. He could see strategies, errors, small victories and losses, all unfolding in a way that suggested someone, or something, had recorded them, preserved them, and now presented them as proof. "Your species adapts in ways I did not anticipate," the Queen said softly. Her voice carried both admiration and caution. "Even when cornered, you find a path. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, you do not yield. That is why I am here now." Elias felt the weight of her words. Humans were known in some parts of the galaxy for resilience, for ingenuity. But to the Zytharians, an ancient and advanced species, this was unusual. "Dangerous even? Why me?" he asked. "Oh." Why focus on a single human when so many have faced impossible odds? The Queen stepped closer, her presence commanding yet strangely intimate. "Because you embody the qualities I seek: resourcefulness, courage, empathy, the willingness to act when others hesitate. Your species is unpredictable, but you, human, carry the spark that can guide them, perhaps even save them." Elias's mind reeled. The idea that one human could influence the fate of entire colonies, entire wars, entire civilizations. It was absurd. Yet the images on the walls, the intensity of the Queen's gaze, and the hum of the hall all whispered a different truth. "I am no hero," he said quietly. "I am just human. That is all we ever are.
The Queen's eyes glimmered.
And that is enough." She gestured again, and the projections shifted once more. This time, the images were more dynamic. Humans and Zytharians clashed in battle simulations. Ships weaving through asteroid fields, colonies fortified with ingenuity rather than overwhelming power, humans outthinking alien strategies rather than overpowering them. Every scenario emphasized one constant: human adaptability. Elias studied the projections, feeling a strange mixture of pride and unease. Humans were not invincible. They failed as often as they succeeded, but in every failure, in every desperate moment, they learned, adapted, and tried again. "Your people have potential," the Queen continued, her voice almost reverent. "Potential that even I did not foresee. And yet, potential alone does not guarantee survival." Her words hung in the air, a warning wrapped in admiration. Elias understood the stakes now. This was not a diplomatic visit. This was a test of humanity, of him, of the choices they would make. The future of his species could very well depend on what happened in this palace, in this room, in this moment. He took a deep breath. "If this is a test," he said slowly, deliberately, "then I will do my part. Humans do not give up. We fight, we adapt, we survive. That is what we have always done, and that is what we will continue to do." The Queen's gaze seemed to pierce through him, weighing his words, assessing their truth. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. The shift was small, but it was there. "You speak well, human," she said softly, "but words alone are insufficient.
You must act. Show me that your species is not merely stubborn, but worthy."
Elias's pulse quickened. "What do you want me to do?" The Queen's expression darkened slightly, a shadow passing over her otherwise serene features. "Survive, lead, inspire. Your species has faced extinction before, and yet you endure. I want to see that endurance in action, not theory." The hall shimmered, and suddenly Elias found himself staring at a series of holographic maps. Star systems, trade routes, and colonies glowed like constellations, each one marked with symbols indicating danger, conflict, or opportunity.
"You must guide your species," the Queen said.
Predict threats, exploit weaknesses, Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Do this, and you will earn the right to continue. Fail, and your people will be at risk. And not just from me. Elias swallowed, the enormity of her words pressing on him. Every choice mattered. Every hesitation could cost lives. And yet, deep in his chest, he felt the familiar spark, the drive that had carried humanity through centuries of conflict and disaster. Fear might temper it, but it would never extinguish it. He glanced at Mara and Dr. Hell Kim. Their faces reflected the same mixture of fear and determination, he felt. They trusted him, as humans always did in the face of impossible odds. Elias turned back to the Queen. If this is what you require, then I will do it. I will protect, lead, and inspire. I will do whatever it takes to ensure humanity survives. The Queen's eyes softened, just slightly. Good, she said. But know this. The path will not be simple. You will face enemies you cannot anticipate. You will confront choices that may seem impossible, and you will be tested not only by others, but by yourself.
Elias felt a chill run through him.
He had faced impossible odds before, but nothing like this. Nothing that demanded both his intellect and his spirit, his courage and his humanity.
Then we begin, she said, her voice now echoing with authority that filled the entire hall.
You will see what is required, human, and you will learn whether your species is truly worthy. The holograms shifted again, zooming in on a distant planet, under siege. Elias recognized the signs. Human colonies under attack, forces outnumbered, defenses failing. And yet, in every corner, humans were improvising, fighting with whatever they had, refusing to yield. He felt a surge of determination. This was not just a test of survival. It was a test of identity, of what it meant to be human. The Queen wanted to see more than strategy or courage. She wanted to see the spark that defined them. Ingenuity, adaptability, resilience, and an unyielding will to survive.
Elias turned to his team. We have work to do, he said firmly.
This isn't just about diplomacy anymore. This is about survival. And humanity will not fail. Always. Doctor. Kim adjusted her equipment, her eyes wide with anticipation. Let's see if they're ready for what comes next. Elias took one last look at the Queen. Her eyes held a mixture of curiosity and caution, as if she were both teacher and judge. And then he stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The future of humanity, the test of their species, and the judgment of a queen rested on the choices he would make in the coming days. And for the first time, Elias understood the weight of that responsibility fully. He was human, and humans, no matter the odds, never surrendered. The command room on the shuttle shook lightly as Elias Dray stared at the holographic map that floated before him. Systems glimmered like stars, each one marked with red warnings, yellow caution signs, and green safe zones. The Queen's test was no longer theoretical. Humanity's colonies were in danger, and it was up to him to guide them. Not just as a soldier, but as a strategist, a leader, and a spark of inspiration for millions he had never met. Mara Seti leaned over his shoulder, her eyes scanning the map. Commander, the Zytherians predicted our first move, she said, voice tense. They've deployed decoy forces in the outer system. If we strike directly, we'll lose half our defenses before even reaching the colonies.
Elias's jaw tightened. The challenge was real, immediate, and ruthless.
Then we don't strike directly, he said. His mind raced through options. Human ingenuity had always thrived in improvisation, in turning disadvantage into opportunity. We'll use the terrain, the asteroid belts, and the sensor blind spots.
They expect us to follow conventional patterns. We won't.
Leona Kim frowned. Are you suggesting we take untested routes with civilians depending on us?
Elias met her gaze. Exactly. Conventional thinking won't save them.
We need unconventional solutions, or nothing will work. The shuttle banked sharply, navigating through a narrow canyon of floating debris that the Excytherians had overlooked. Sensors flickered, warning of collisions. But Elias's instincts were precise. Humans were unpredictable, calculating risk in ways even the Queen had not anticipated. The shuttle's engines roared as they shot through the debris, emerging behind a fleet of enemy ships, hidden from detection. "Impressive," Mara whispered.
"They didn't see this coming."
Elias allowed himself a brief nod, but he didn't celebrate. This was just the first step. The Queen's challenge was more than survival. It was about proving humanity could think beyond expectations, could act when cornered, could improvise in ways that no advanced alien species could fully predict. As they approached the beleaguered colony, the comm systems crackled. Panic and fear were audible in the voices of the civilians and defenders. Ships had been destroyed, supply lines cut, and their enemies were closing in fast.
"Commander Dre," a voice called. It was one of the colony leaders.
"Do you have a plan?" Elias glanced at the holographic display, considering the possibilities. He could retreat, regroup, and risk total annihilation. Or he could act, push the limits, and hope human ingenuity held.
"We're not retreating,"
he said firmly. "We adapt. We survive. We fight smarter, not harder. Listen carefully. I need every ship, every crew member, every civilian capable of movement to follow these orders exactly. Improvisation is welcome, but stay within the plan." He outlined a strategy that relied on the colony's minimal defenses, using decoy drones, repurposed cargo ships, and hidden energy fields to mislead the enemy. Humans were resourceful, and even with limited technology, they could turn nearly nothing into an advantage. As the first enemy vessels closed in, the humans enacted Elias's plan. Cargo ships were rigged to emit false energy signatures, fooling enemy sensors into thinking the colony was abandoned. Drones zipped through the void, drawing attacks away from critical installations. Hidden turrets powered by jury-rigged systems fired in unpredictable bursts. The enemy faltered, confusion rippling through their ranks. The humans had bought time, and in that moment, Elias saw the spark of something the Queen had recognized, the ingenuity and adaptability of his species. "This is working," Mara said, disbelief and admiration in her voice. "They can't anticipate every move we make."
Elias nodded, eyes fixed on the battle unfolding. "They never will," he said.
Humans had never relied on brute force alone. They relied on thinking, on creativity, on finding solutions no one else could imagine. Yet, even as victory seemed possible, a new threat emerged. A massive warship, unlike anything the humans had encountered, dropped out of hyperspace, blocking the path to the colony. Its weapons glowed with deadly precision, capable of destroying everything in seconds.
Dr. Kim gasped. "That's a Zitherian ship. The Queen herself. She's watching this."
Elias's mind raced. Retreat was impossible. The colony's survival depended on facing this new challenge head-on. He studied the vessel's movements, its patterns, and its timing. Humans had always excelled when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds, and now it was time to prove it again. "Target its sensors," he ordered. "Distract it with drones. Use the debris field. Force it into blind spots. If we can disable its targeting systems, we can get through." The crew moved with precision, carrying out the plan under Elias's direction. Drones zipped around the ship, luring weapons fire while cargo vessels maneuvered through the debris, creating shadows and false readings. The Zitherian warship fired relentlessly, but human improvisation and quick thinking turned its strength against itself. For a brief moment, hope flared. The massive ship's targeting systems faltered, giving the humans a critical opening. Small attack vessels surged forward, striking weak points in the enemy's armor. Explosions lit the void, and the colony's defenses began to stabilize. Elias allowed himself a fraction of relief, but he knew the test was far from over. The Queen had orchestrated this not to see them win, but to see them survive under pressure. to adapt under threat, to act with intelligence and courage. Suddenly, a new comm alert flashed. Another colony, deeper in the system, was under attack, and their defenses were failing. Resources were limited, reinforcements scarce. The humans had succeeded here, but the challenge multiplied. Elias clenched his fists.
"We move immediately," he said. "No hesitation."
Every second counts. Humanity does not wait for permission. Humanity survives, and we do what must be done. The crew followed without question, their trust in him absolute. They navigated through asteroid belts, debris fields, and enemy patrols with ingenuity that outmatched even the most advanced sensors. Every move was calculated, yet flexible. Every risk was weighed, yet embraced. Humans thrived where precision and creativity met, and Elias directed it all. As they reached the second colony, the enemy had already begun orbital bombardment. Civilians fled in panic, while the defenders tried to hold their lines. Elias assessed the situation quickly, formulating a plan that relied on speed, distraction, and clever use of limited resources.
"Deploy the drones in a diversion pattern," he ordered. "Set the cargo ships to emit false signals near the orbital guns.
Lead the enemy fire away from the civilians." The humans executed the plan flawlessly. Drones zipped past enemy ships, drawing their fire, while the colony's defenders launched counterattacks from hidden positions. Cargo ships, now acting as mobile shields, absorbed energy blasts, allowing civilians to evacuate. The humans had turned desperation into advantage once again. Elias watched the battle unfold and felt the familiar spark of pride. Humanity had always survived by refusing to be predictable, by thinking in ways no one else could anticipate. They had no superior technology, no overwhelming firepower, yet they had won moments where others would have failed. The Queen's voice echoed in his memory. "Your species adapts in ways I did not anticipate. Even when cornered, you find a path." He realized the truth of it now. The battle was not just physical. It was a test of ingenuity, of spirit, of unyielding determination. The enemy forces began to retreat, unable to anticipate the humans' improvisation. The colonies were safe, for now. Humans had survived, and they had done so in a way that no alien intelligence could fully predict. Elias allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Queen's challenge was ongoing. She had not merely tested them in battle. She had observed their leadership, their adaptability, and their courage under pressure. The stakes were higher than ever, and every decision from this point forward could shape the fate of entire civilizations. "Commander," Mara said, her voice tinged with awe, "we did it."
"They're retreating. The colonies are safe, for now." Elias nodded, eyes still fixed on the holographic map. "We did what we had to do."
Humanity adapts, humanity survives.
"And we're not done yet."
Dr. Kim adjusted her equipment, her expression serious. "The Queen will be watching the next move even more closely. She's testing not just our survival skills, but our ability to lead, to inspire, to make impossible choices."
Elias leaned back, considering the weight of her words.
But she was right. Survival was only the first step. The real test was whether humans could rise to meet the expectations of a species that had long underestimated them. "Then we keep moving," he said quietly, determination hardening his voice. "Every colony, every system, every life counts. We will face every challenge, and we will continue to adapt."
"That is who we are."
Mara placed a hand on his shoulder.
"And we follow you, Commander. Always." Elias allowed a small, grim smile. "Good. Then let's show the Queen what humanity is capable of." For the first time, he understood the full scope of the challenge.
This was not a single battle, not a simple test of tactics. It was a test of spirit, intelligence, and courage under pressure. It was a measure of what it truly meant to be human in a galaxy that had long doubted their worth. And in that moment, Elias Dre resolved that humanity would not fail. No matter the odds, no matter the enemies, no matter the trials ahead, they would endure, they would adapt, they would survive. Because that was the essence of humanity. Relentless, unpredictable, and impossible to defeat when their spirit was fully engaged. And the Queen, watching silently from her throne far away, would see that truth unfold in ways she could never have expected.
The stars stretched endlessly before Commander Elias Dre as the fleet of human ships navigated the outer edges of the Zytherian system.
The battles had been won, for now, but the war was far from over. Every victory had been hard fought, every decision a gamble. Elias could feel the weight of the Queen's scrutiny like a silent shadow over every maneuver, every calculation, every breath.
"We can't keep reacting," Mara said quietly, her eyes scanning the holographic map that floated above the control panel.
Every colony we save, every fleet we defend, we're just one step behind. Eventually, they'll anticipate our moves.
Elias nodded, knowing she was right. Reaction alone would not be enough.
Humans were survivors because they adapted faster than their enemies could predict. But the Queen was testing more than their ability to survive. She was testing their capacity to lead, to think boldly, and to take risks no one else would dare. He studied the map, focusing on the position of the Zytherian fleets and the enemy forces in the outer colonies. One option emerged, risky, but potentially decisive.
"We go on the offensive," he said slowly. "Not directly."
Not in the open. We lure them into the asteroid belts and force them to fight on our terms.
Mara blinked.
You're suggesting we attack? With limited ships against their strongest forces? Elias's jaw tightened. Yes. Humans do not wait for permission. We do not surrender to fear. If we want to prove our worth, we must take the fight to them in a way no one expects. Doctor? Leona Kim leaned forward, concern etched on her face. Commander, this is extremely risky. If the plan fails... Elias didn't finish her sentence. He didn't need to. They all understood the stakes. Human ingenuity had carried them this far, but boldness and creativity would determine if they survived the next phase.
"Prepare all ships for rapid deployment," Elias ordered. "Deploy the decoy drones and cargo vessels in staggered patterns."
We'll mask our true numbers and movements. The enemy will think they know our strategy, but they won't. The fleet moved with precision, each human vessel carrying out its role with exact timing. Drones zipped through the void, drawing sensors and fire, while cargo ships created false signatures to confuse the enemy. The humans were smaller, fewer in number and seemingly weaker, but they were cunning, unpredictable, and united. The first wave of enemy ships entered the asteroid belt. Massive Zytherian cruisers fired their weapons indiscriminately, but the dense field of rocks and debris forced them to slow, to recalculate, to adapt to conditions humans had studied in hours, not decades. Elias guided his fleet like a conductor leading an orchestra. Every command was calculated, yet flexible, allowing human crews to improvise in real time.
"We're moving too slowly,"
Mara said, tension rising in her voice.
"The enemy's leading ships will reach the colonies before we can intercept."
Elias shook his head. No.
"They think they're faster, but speed isn't everything."
They underestimate the ability of humans to anticipate and adapt. Watch and learn. He sent a signal to a series of hidden mining stations within the asteroid belt. The stations, now repurposed as improvised weapons platforms, came alive. Energy beams sliced through space, damaging enemy shields and forcing the leading cruisers off course. The human fleet surged forward, striking the distracted enemies from angles no one could predict. Explosions lit the void, painting the darkness with fire and light. The Queen, observing silently from her distant palace, tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Elias could feel her judgment, but he refused to falter. Human survival depended on action, on boldness, on seizing the moment even when the odds were stacked impossibly high. "Commander, shields are weakening," Mara warned.
"They've adapted to our decoys!"
Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then we give them something new. Take the cargo ships and set them on a collision course with the largest cruisers. They'll have to divert fire, or risk destroying themselves." The order was carried out with precision. Massive human ships moved like controlled wrecking balls, forcing the enemy to scatter and creating openings for the human attack vessels. In the chaos, smaller human teams boarded disabled cruisers, repurposing alien technology and turning it against their own fleet. "Remarkable," Dr. Kim muttered, awe in her voice. "They can't believe this is happening." Elias allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. Humans had no technological advantage, only creativity, courage, and the ability to adapt in ways no Zytherian could fully predict. And it was working. The enemy formation fractured under the unexpected tactics. The asteroid belt, once a danger, became an ally. Humans struck from hidden angles, ambushed and maneuvered in ways that larger, slower ships could not follow. Every victory was measured, careful, precise. And yet, Elias knew the Queen's challenge was not just about strategy or survival. She wanted to see whether humanity could rise beyond reaction, beyond survival instinct, into leadership, vision, and innovation. He needed to push further, take risks no one would dare, and prove that humans were capable of more than mere survival. "Prepare for the next phase," he said, voice calm but firm. "We hit their command ship."
"They are centralized, expecting us to attack the colonies. We will attack their leader instead."
One decisive move, and the rest will crumble.
Mara's eyes widened. "That's
incredibly risky. If we fail, the entire fleet will be destroyed."
Elias met her gaze. Risk is part of survival. Humans have always survived by taking calculated risks, by doing what no one else would dare. This is no different.
trust in what we've built. Trust in humanity."
The fleet moved as one toward the enemy command vessel, using the asteroid field as cover. The enemy fired relentlessly, but human crews adapted with improvised maneuvers, shields, and decoy tactics. Every move was calculated yet flexible, relying on ingenuity and adaptability rather than brute force. As they approached the command ship, Elias issued the final orders. Attack teams would board, disable critical systems, and use captured technology to turn the enemy's weapons against them. It was audacious, dangerous, and entirely human. The boarding commenced. Small human ships dodged heavy fire, docking with precision on the massive alien vessel. Crews surged inside, moving with a combination of skill, improvisation, and sheer courage. Systems were hacked, energy cores rerouted, and within minutes, the command ship's firepower turned inward. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet. Chaos spread as ships scrambled to respond, only to find themselves facing attacks from within their own ranks. The human fleet, smaller and underestimated, had shifted the balance entirely through ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. Elias watched, pride swelling despite the danger. This was humanity at its finest. Unpredictable, relentless, capable of triumph even against overwhelming odds. The Queen's silent observation no longer felt like judgment. It was recognition, and perhaps even admiration. When the last enemy vessel fled or surrendered, the human fleet regrouped. They were battered, but victorious. Colonies were safe. Fleets were intact. Humanity had not just survived, they had prevailed. Mara exhaled, tension leaving her body. "We did it. Against all odds." Elias allowed himself a brief smile.
"Yes,
But this is just the beginning.
The Queen's challenge isn't over. She's testing more than survival. She's testing leadership, vision, and the ability to shape the future. And we have proven that humanity can rise to meet any challenge. Dr. Bencaro? Kim nodded, her voice quiet but full of awe. They underestimated us. We've shown them what humans are capable of. Elias looked at the stars stretching endlessly ahead. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and unimaginable challenges. But humanity had survived against impossible odds before, and they would continue to do so. "The Queen will see this," he said, determination hardening his voice. "And she will know that humans are not to be dismissed, not by history, not by alien powers, not by anyone who underestimates what we can do when we fight, adapt, and survive."
Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. "And we follow you, Commander. Always."
Elias allowed himself a brief, grim smile. Humanity had survived, humanity had triumphed, and humanity had proven that even in the face of impossible odds, their spirit could not be broken. And somewhere far away, the Queen watched silently, her mind calculating, observing, and perhaps beginning to recognize that humans were a species unlike any she had encountered, unpredictable, relentless, and impossible to control. Elias Stray understood the truth fully now. The test was far from over. But humanity had shown that they could rise above expectation, surpass prediction, and survive where others might fail. And when the next challenge came, as it inevitably would, humans would be ready, not because of technology, numbers, or brute force, but because of their greatest strength, ingenuity, courage, and an unyielding will to endure. The galaxy had watched, and humanity had made its statement. They were survivors, leaders, and innovators. And the Queen, observing every move, would never forget it. The silence of the Queen's palace felt heavier than any battlefield Elias Stray had ever faced. He stood at the front of the human delegation, looking across the grand hall where the Zytharians had gathered. The events of the past weeks had pushed them beyond survival into leadership, ingenuity, and action that no one, even the Queen herself, had anticipated. Yet now, standing before her once more, Elias understood that the final judgment was at hand. The Queen moved with the same calm grace that had unnerved him the first day he entered this place. Her gaze settled on him, but Elias could feel that it was no longer only him she observed. It was humanity itself, measured, weighed, and evaluated for worth. "You have shown ingenuity," she said, her voice low, almost musical. "You have shown courage. You have adapted when survival seemed impossible, and yet the true test has always been more than surviving. It is about vision, about what you do when others doubt you, when failure seems inevitable, when hope is scarce." Elias held his breath. He had expected praise, perhaps cautious acknowledgement, but not this gravity. "We have done what we could," he said carefully. "Humans do not surrender. We adapt, we survive, and we act when action is necessary. That is our nature." The Queen's eyes glimmered, reflecting both the light of the crystalline hall and something far deeper. Calculation, curiosity, and perhaps a reluctant respect. "You have proven your species can survive, but survival alone is not enough. Leadership requires sacrifice, foresight, and the ability to inspire others to rise beyond themselves."
Elias felt a quiet determination settle over him.
Humanity had always survived because it never gave up. Even when outnumbered, outgunned, or outmatched, humans found ways to adapt, to improvise, to win. And now the Queen wanted to see whether they could not only survive but also guide, inspire, and create change where none seemed possible. He took a slow breath and spoke, his voice steady. "The humans I know do more than survive. We see possibilities where others see limits. We inspire one another to act when despair is strongest. We turn weakness into advantage, failure into knowledge, fear into determination. That is what we do." That is what I believe humanity can do.
The Queen studied him, tilting her head slightly. Then she gestured, and the holographic projections around the hall shifted.
They displayed the colonies, star systems, and fleets that had been threatened by both Zytherian and rival forces. Some had survived because of Elias's guidance, others because human crews had improvised, and some had fallen despite every effort. But every loss carried lessons that were already being applied elsewhere.
You have not only led in battle, the Queen said, but you have inspired.
You have forced your species to act as one, to improvise, to overcome what should have been insurmountable.
Elias's heart pounded.
He had expected tests of courage, ingenuity, and survival, but this was something greater. This was a test of humanity's very essence. He could feel it, the weight of responsibility, the hope of millions, and the realization that their actions mattered far beyond themselves. Mara stepped forward, her voice steady and proud.
Humanity does not rely on fear. We rely on creativity, collaboration, and courage.
Every challenge is an opportunity to rise, to learn, to adapt. That is how we survive and thrive. The Queen's gaze swept over the team, lingering on each human present. There was no malice in her eyes now, only a measured assessment. And yet, she said, potential alone is not proof of worth. Actions, decisions, and results are what define a species. You have shown survival and adaptation. Now I will show you the consequence of your choices. The hall shimmered, and suddenly Elias felt as if the floor itself had opened. Holographic simulations appeared around them, projecting distant systems under threat. One by one, human colonies appeared, some struggling, others thriving. Enemy forces were shown closing in, and yet, in each scenario, humans adapted. They built makeshift defenses, coordinated evacuations, and improvised strategies that defied logic and expectation. Elias stepped forward. We can do more than survive. We can lead. We can protect, inspire, and create hope where others see none. We are capable of more than instinct. We can plan, adapt, and act with purpose. That is what humanity is and always has been. The Queen's expression shifted subtly. She had expected words, maybe even clever tactics, but not this bold declaration of identity.
Elias felt a sudden awareness. The final part of the test was not about what humans could do alone.
It was about what they could accomplish together, how they could inspire, and how they could change the outcome of impossible situations through intelligence, creativity, and leadership. You speak with conviction, she said.
But words without action are meaningless. Show me, human.
Show me the true measure of your species. Elias turned back to the holograms. He realized what he had to do. It was time to combine every advantage humans had displayed so far, strategy, improvisation, courage, and ingenuity, into one decisive act. He pulled up the coordinates of the rival forces threatening the outer colonies, and cross-referenced them with available human fleets and resources.
Deploy all ships to critical points, he ordered.
Use diversion, camouflage, and surprise. Position civilians and colonies for protection.
We will engage where it matters most, not where the enemy expects. Every ship, every pilot, every resource counts.
Act and adapt as needed. We survive, we protect, and we inspire. The human fleet moved with precision, but also with flexibility. Drones and cargo ships were used to mislead sensors, while attack vessels executed unpredictable maneuvers. Humans had no overwhelming firepower, but they had ingenuity, improvisation, and courage. As the first enemy ships entered the outer colonies, humans executed their plan. The enemy expected predictable tactics, but instead they faced a web of deception, improvisation, and cunning. Mining equipment became makeshift turrets. Cargo transports acted as shields. Drones zipping unpredictably drew fire and opened gaps for boarding teams. Every move showcased humanity's ability to adapt, survive, and thrive against impossible odds. The tide of battle turned. The enemy fleets faltered, struggling to anticipate human creativity. Ships that seemed doomed found new life through clever improvisation. Colonies that were on the brink of destruction were stabilized, civilian casualties minimized, and the enemy forced to retreat. Elias's voice echoed across the fleet.
This is humanity at its finest. Adapt, improvise, survive, inspire.
We do not yield, we do not surrender, and we will rise against every challenge. This is who we are. Even as the last enemy vessel retreated, Elias felt the enormity of what had been achieved. Humanity had survived, protected the vulnerable, and demonstrated ingenuity beyond expectation. But more than that, they had acted together, as one species with courage and determination, guided by the spark that defined them. The Queen's voice finally broke the silence, calm and measured, but carrying weight. Perhaps I misjudged your kind. You have survived where many would fail. You have adapted in ways even I did not predict. And most importantly, you have inspired others to rise above fear, despair, and expectation. Elias stepped forward. We are humans. That is what we do. We survive, we adapt, we protect, and we lead when necessary. We are not perfect. We fail, we learn, and we rise again. But no matter the odds, we endure. The Queen's eyes softened. The harsh evaluation, the judgment, the challenge, all had given way to recognition.
Your species is unlike any I have observed.
Unpredictable, resilient, and capable of incredible ingenuity. Perhaps you are worthy, after all. Elias allowed himself a small, measured smile. Thank you. Humanity has always done what it must, and we will continue to do so.
Mara and Dr. Kim stepped closer, their faces reflecting pride, relief, and the quiet satisfaction of having survived trials that seemed impossible.
Together, the human delegation stood united, a symbol of everything the Queen had tested: courage, leadership, ingenuity, and the unyielding human spirit. The Queen rose slightly, her presence commanding yet serene.
Then perhaps it is time to forge a new path.
Together, humanity and Zytheria may yet find a way to coexist, to learn from one another, to rise above conflict and uncertainty. Elias felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The challenge was complete. The battles had been fought, the ingenuity proven, and humanity had risen to meet every expectation and exceeded them. He glanced at Mara and Dr. Kim. This is only the beginning, he said softly.
But we've shown what humans can do, and nothing will stop us from continuing to survive and thrive.
The Queen's gaze lingered on him, thoughtful. Yes, and now the galaxy will see that humans are not to be underestimated, that even when they seem small, weak, or outnumbered, they are capable of remarkable feats. Elias understood the truth fully now. Survival, adaptation, ingenuity, leadership, and inspiration. They were not just traits, they were the essence of humanity. And in proving their worth, humans had not only survived, they had earned respect, acknowledgement, and perhaps the beginnings of an alliance that could shape the galaxy itself. He stepped back, taking in the grand hall, the Zytherians, and the knowledge that humanity had passed the greatest test it had ever faced. They had survived impossible odds, they had led where leadership was necessary, and they had inspired where others had faltered. And somewhere, in the quiet distance, the Queen observed, silent but satisfied, knowing that humans had earned their place among the stars, not because of brute force, not because of numbers, but because of courage, ingenuity, adaptability, and an unyielding will to endure. Elias Dray understood it clearly. Humans were not just survivors. Humans were creators, innovators, and a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, and now it would remember. The test was over. Humanity had not only survived, it had triumphed. And in that triumph, the true power of the human spirit shone brighter than any star. The room fell silent, not with fear, but with awe. And in that silence, Elias knew one undeniable truth. Humanity had proven itself worthy, and the universe would never forget it.